or two here in the back, sort of for a quick reference. And then the rest of this relates to how you scored with ideas and resources related to you as a student. So the kind of point is people don't have to remember what it is that they did here to use this information to help them make decisions.
Okay.
Okay, and you're just doing audio?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a bar graph, and these are the things that you did. This is which version we're using. We have raw scores to do with accuracy and speed, and they're converted to percentiles by age groups. The pattern of scores is what's important. I have a little system that I use to explain things. And we're going to start with the 3 scores that make up your basic or core pattern. To address those, we produce a whole series of articles called Spotlights, which is about this combination. So starting at the top, ideaphoria is the ability to produce ideas. So synonyms and verbs that you'll see in the material for this aptitude. It's work that's about communicating, explaining, persuading, or informing. Suggestions in here are things like counseling, teaching, advertising. You get to use the ideas that you generate. Because if you had a job where nobody really wanted to hear from you, you would continue to have these ideas, but if you didn't get to use them, you'd be pretty frustrated by that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And then something with a similar significance is inductive reasoning. That was the test with the rows of pictures, and you had to mark the 3 that had the most in common.
Mm-hmm.
So synonyms for this aptitude, this is connecting the dots, it's diagnostic thinking, it's problem solving. And the higher people score, the more quickly they do that. So the more important it is that their work then give them something new to figure out or diagnose. Mm-hmm. So this is the aptitude used in things like medicine, psychology. You're a counselor, you go into work every day and you think, what are we doing? Let's figure this out. Let's solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the 2 sources of occupational suggestions. And then someday when you're working, you get to take into account this 3rd element, which is your natural approach to your work. So we use a word association test. It's the types of things that people say. So the objective person's responses tend to be pretty general or pretty common, and that kind of translates into preferring an approach to work that involves working with other people. So if everyone's thinking in a similar sort of way, collaboration is enjoyable. Objective people like variety to their day. So your basic pattern is this objective approach to using your ideas, solving problems. There are examples of what this combination could look like to get you started. And then there's additional information that you could capitalize on or emphasize in your work. So you have this aptitude here for learning words very easily. That was the Martian words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if someone learns words easily, they often enjoy studying languages because you have to learn thousands of words, if you're studying French or something like that. So there's an article in here that's just about inductive reasoning with information about different types of careers. And then there's an article about sillograms with ideas about different types of opportunities to use that particular aptitude. Do you do languages in school at all?
Yeah, I'm in French.
Do you like it? Is it fun?
Yeah.
Yep. It's a very practical ability as well, learning vocabulary and terminology. It's very useful to be multilingual too. So you could capitalize on it by keeping up with your language. I use little check marks because it's also a very useful aptitude to have. So check, learning words is something that you can do. You have to learn words no matter what your job is. Mm-hmm. So it can either be important to your work or just very useful. A similar statement can be made about this aptitude here, analytical reasoning. That's the ability to organize, to plan, to prioritize. On that test, you had to arrange ideas in a logical sequence.
Yeah.
So you did that. You got the answers right. You scored sort of in the high average range, indicating that organization is not something that you'll need extra strategies and time and effort for. It's a part of life. Everybody has to figure out, okay, where do I start, and so on. So when someone scores low in the organizational area, they just have to be very aware, have extra time, use your calendar, make lists, and you're fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dysphoria, what test
Yep.
was that?
That's also just a very useful aptitude to have, but maybe not the priority for your day. The fact that you can do clerical work very quickly. That was the number checking test, the columns of numbers. You had to mark the pairs that were the same.
Oh, okay.
So somebody with this aptitude can sort of scan or skim through pages in a document. School is clerical, note-taking and testing. You were fast, you were accurate. You can handle it, but it's not what your day is about. So there are different types of aptitudes. So these are the two that are the source of occupational ideas, and you can also do any paperwork that's associated with any job that you might have. Again, if this is a low score, a student might find school frustrating because they have all the note-taking and the testing and the multiple choice timed standardized testing to deal with, and if it takes them longer to get through it, they may not finish things, but you can handle it. But again, it's not the star aptitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your basic pattern again is the objective approach to using those two aptitudes, and you'll see what we're talking about. You could then capitalize on your language learning ability, or very useful, you can organize things, you can do paperwork. Those are parts of life. In terms of a basic direction, it's helpful to have somewhere to start. So we take a look at how people score in the spatial area. The two tests were paper folding and wiggly block. This is a combination of the two scores. We're going to look at that as one score. When people score high, they are spatial, structural, technical, mechanically inclined people. And so we talk about spatial technical fields, hard sciences, medicine, architecture, engineering. People who don't score high, they tend to be more comfortable with work that's more abstract. It's ideas, it's concepts, it's information. Lawyers don't score high, psychologists don't, journalists don't. Those are jobs about words, as opposed to jobs that are more about things, is a way to look at it.
Yeah.
So you scored average. I'm not saying that you couldn't be an engineer or an architect. It tends to be a little bit more effort than people really want to make for 4 years of school and then 8 hours a day minimum at their job. So all of the ideas in here are things that don't need this particular aptitude. But if you think about the spectrum of occupations, it's helpful to have somewhere, a direction to start with. You sort of scored sort of average. Did you enjoy paper folding or wiggly block?
No, I was just wondering.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just not that easy.
No.
So what it says is not that you couldn't do it. It's do you want to feel like that all the time about your job?
No.
And generally the answer is no.
Yeah.
So more of a non-spatial thinker is what we're saying.
Okay.
We have a couple of tests about numbers. So number facility, you had to add and multiply. That's the chips with the numbers on them. So that's the everyday arithmetic aptitude, dividing up a restaurant bill, calculating sales tax, and so on. And then number series, you had to figure out the next number in the pattern. So you scored average here, but in 3 cases, you just did the math wrong at the end. So, for example, the answer here is 50, and you actually wrote down 37 plus 13. So you had the pattern right. That was the error at the end.
Yeah.
Same thing here. 54 divided by 2 is 27, not 22.
Yeah.
And again, here you saw the pattern, except you added instead of subtracting.
Yeah.
The answer is 8. Did you enjoy it? Was this sort of fun?
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't. Math has never been really my strong
Okay, because with a score like you have, some people are like, oh yeah, that was really cool. Oh geez, I made those errors at the end. So we might talk about numbers with them, but your reaction seems to be
No numbers.
not so much. Okay, well still though, it's very practical that you can do it if you have to.
Okay. That's good.
Numbers are everywhere. It doesn't have to be math. Numbers are everywhere. Budgets, costs, statistics, economics.
Yeah.
So you can handle it. If you don't enjoy it, at least you can do it.
Yes, I can handle it.
Yeah, so that's very practical.
Okay.
So life is full of paperwork. You have to think about organization. You have to learn words. You may have to work with numbers or money or budgets, and these are all things that you can do. Other people with a similar experience on that test may have said, oh, I really like that. I'm taking an economics class. But if you're just not that person, that's fine. But at least you can if necessary.
You'll see in economics next semester.
Yeah, it's not math, actually. So math and numbers are seen as the same thing, and to a certain point they are. But at a certain point they also split. Math, calculus, physics becomes spatial. Numbers is finance, statistics, economics. So if you have to take economics, you might find it like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. It's different.
Yeah.
But even if you don't enjoy it, at least if necessary, you can.
Good. Okay.
All right, I'm not done. But do you have any questions so far, though?
Does being a lawyer fall into these two thinking categories?
It can. There's actually no pattern for law.
Okay.
Lawyers as a group don't score any one particular way because law is a huge field.
Yeah.
You think of fields or occupations as world. You've heard the expression, the world of nursing, the world of business.
Yeah.
So in the world of law, what someone would look for is what kind of law do my scores suggest? So this would be things like courtroom law, like law and order law,
Yeah.
defense, prosecution, the faster paced.
That's what
You
I
have to
like.
really, really think quickly and react quickly. So that's certainly a possibility for you based on your scores. It's not something you do immediately after high school. You don't go to law school at 17.
Yeah.
So you have time to prepare for that and explore the field. But there's room in almost any field for almost any set of aptitudes.
Okay.
It's understanding what you'd want to do. So the kind of law that you were thinking is like, I call it law and order law.
Yeah.
Like that fast-paced courtroom, that sort of thing. Yeah, and you could use your ideas. You have to be very persuasive. You have to be creative in your thinking. You do have to sort of think quickly and react quickly, certainly. Law has thousands of legal terms, so you could even learn those without a great deal of effort. And all the schooling wouldn't be too much of it's hard, but it wouldn't be as difficult for you with the clerical ability as it would be for someone without it.
Okay.
But it's all, so law is a possibility. So is advertising. So is psychology. So is sales. So is there's no one way that people use aptitudes. Because there are other factors that go into that decision, which are part of our resources as other things that you can think about. So we have one final score of great significance. It's a little different. It's foresight. And whatever the score is, high, low, or average, it doesn't suggest anything in terms of types of occupations. So in all types of occupations, there are people who score high and people who score low, even average. What it has to do with is how people think about the idea of objectives, of goals. Are they very long-term in their outlook? They like to have a plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or are they more immediate and short-term? And that particular test was the 6 little line drawings, and you had to write down what they made you think of on the computer. So what you were doing was generating possibilities. So the person who scores high generates lots of possibilities, of options. I could do this, but I could do that. And they're very helpful because they really think things through. They really look at all the options before they commit to buying a car or buying a computer or choosing a college. They're very aware how many options are out there. The challenging side to this can be that there are too many options, and it becomes difficult to commit to something because they have all these other things that you could do instead. So because of all that they see in the present, they do well when they have a clearer sense of exactly where am I going? What's the plan here? Goals is what they need. So if you're 16 and you want to be a doctor, that's 10 years of school. And you know what classes to take and you know what schools to look at, all in service of achieving this distant objective. So when people who score high do have these distant objectives and goals, they can be pretty determined about achieving them. So they say, well, yes, it will take me 10 years to get a medical degree, but that's okay, it's what I want to do. So they can be very determined, tenacious is a word. So it's helpful, it will get you where you want to go, but it does need to be sort of understood and kind of managed, because along with that the ability to be driven and determined and long term, there's indecision, there's afraid to commit, because by choosing this, I can't have that, So maybe that's better. So there can be kind of a lot of around and around, especially at this age, confronted with all the majors, all the colleges.